The desperate desire to heal an avoidant partner represents one of the most psychologically complex and emotionally exhausting endeavors in human relationships. This desire emerges from a profound misunderstanding of how healing actually occurs and a fundamental misconception about the nature of influence within intimate partnerships. The truth about healing avoidant attachment lies not in direct intervention, therapeutic persuasion, or emotional rescue operations, but in a counterintuitive approach that focuses entirely on your own psychological development and self-actualization. When you prioritize your own healing and thriving above all attempts to fix your partner, you create the only conditions under which genuine transformation becomes possible for them. This approach works through psychological principles that operate beneath conscious awareness, triggering deep internal processes that cannot be accessed through direct confrontation or emotional appeals. The fundamental impossibility of direct healing. Understanding why you cannot directly heal an avoidant partner requires examining the psychological architecture that maintains their avoidant patterns. Avoidant attachment operates as a sophisticated defense system designed to protect against perceived emotional threats, particularly the vulnerability associated with intimate connection. This defense system functions automatically, responding to attempts at healing or change as potential dangers that must be neutralized or escaped. The harder you push for emotional connection or psychological growth, the more powerfully their avoidant defenses activate to maintain their protective emotional distance. The avoidance resistance to healing stems from deep-seated beliefs about emotional safety and self-protection that were formed during critical developmental periods. These beliefs operate at unconscious levels, creating automatic responses that prioritize emotional safety over connection or growth. Their nervous system has been trained to interpret emotional intimacy and vulnerability as existential threats, making conscious attempts at healing feel genuinely dangerous rather than beneficial. Direct healing attempts trigger the avoidance core wound around emotional engulfment and loss of autonomy. When you focus on changing or healing them, you inadvertently activate their deepest fears about being controlled, overwhelmed, or consumed by another person's emotional needs. This creates a psychological paradox where your desire to help actually reinforces the very patterns you're trying to change, strengthening their avoidant defenses through repeated activation. The avoidance identity structure is often built around being self-sufficient and emotionally independent. Attempts to heal or help them directly challenge this core identity, creating psychological threats that must be defended against. They experience your healing efforts as implicit criticisms of their coping mechanisms and direct challenges to their fundamental sense of self, making resistance not just likely, but psychologically necessary for maintaining their identity coherence. Their healing resistance also stems from learned patterns around emotional manipulation and control. Many avoidant individuals have histories of relationships where emotional expression was used as a tool for manipulation or control. Your attempts to facilitate their healing may be unconsciously interpreted through these historical lenses, making your genuine care appear threatening or manipulative regardless of your actual intentions. The psychology of self-focus as catalyst, the only pathway to potentially influencing an avoidant partner's healing journey, lies in completely redirecting your focus away from them and toward your own psychological development and life satisfaction. This approach works through sophisticated psychological mechanisms that operate outside conscious awareness, creating conditions where change becomes possible without triggering defensive responses. When you focus entirely on your own growth and fulfillment, you remove the external pressure that typically activates avoidant defenses while simultaneously modeling the psychological health and emotional authenticity that they unconsciously crave. Self-focus creates psychological space that avoidant individuals desperately need for internal processing and reflection. When you stop trying to change them, you remove the interpersonal pressure that keeps their defensive systems activated, allowing their natural curiosity and growth impulses to emerge. This psychological space is essential for avoidant healing because their attachment wounds were often created in environments where their autonomy and emotional boundaries were not respected. Your own healing and growth process demonstrates possibilities that cannot be communicated through words or direct persuasion. Avoidant individuals are typically skeptical of emotional promises and therapeutic language, but they cannot dismiss the evidence of actual transformation occurring in front of them. When they witness genuine psychological growth and increased life satisfaction in someone they care about, it challenges their unconscious beliefs about the impossibility or danger of emotional development. The modeling effect of your self-focus works through mirror neuron systems and unconscious learning processes that bypass conscious resistance. As you develop greater emotional regulation, authentic self-expression, and life satisfaction, these qualities become contagious through subtle, neurological, and behavioral mechanisms. The avoidant partner begins unconsciously absorbing new patterns of emotional functioning without experiencing them as external impositions or threats to their autonomy. Self-focus also addresses the codependent dynamics that often maintain avoidant relationship patterns. When you stop organizing your life around managing their emotional state or facilitating their growth, you break codependent cycles that may have been unconsciously reinforcing their avoidance. This forces them to confront the consequences of their avoidant behaviors without the buffer of your compensatory efforts. The mirroring effect of thriving. When you genuinely thrive and flourish in your own life, you create a powerful psychological mirror that reflects both possibilities and contrasts that can catalyze deep self-reflection in avoidant partners. This mirroring effect operates through comparison mechanisms that exist below conscious awareness, triggering internal questioning and evaluation processes that cannot be accessed through direct confrontation or emotional appeals. Your thriving creates cognitive dissonance in the avoidance belief systems about emotional risks and relationship costs. They have typically organized their lives around the assumption that emotional openness leads to pain, vulnerability, results in exploitation, and intimate relationships inevitably become sources of suffering. When they witness you achieving greater happiness, fulfillment, and life satisfaction through emotional authenticity and healthy relationships, it challenges these core beliefs in ways that cannot be easily dismissed or rationalized away. The contrast between your growing vitality and their emotional stagnation becomes increasingly difficult to ignore as you continue developing. Avoidant individuals often maintain their patterns through psychological numbing and emotional suppression that temporarily masks the costs of their defensive strategies. Your visible growth and happiness make these costs more apparent by providing a clear comparison point that highlights what they might be missing through their avoidant approach. Your thriving also demonstrates that the emotional risks they fear are not only manageable, but actually lead to greater life satisfaction. This demonstration occurs through lived experience rather than theoretical discussion, making it far more convincing than any verbal argument or therapeutic intervention. They cannot dismiss your evidence of emotional growth and increased happiness as naive optimism or temporary delusion when it persists and deepens over time. The mirroring effect works particularly powerfully because it respects their autonomy while providing clear evidence of alternative possibilities. You're not trying to convince them or change them directly, but simply living your life in ways that demonstrate different approaches to emotional and relational challenges. This respect for their autonomy prevents defensive activation while still providing powerful information about alternative ways of living. The autonomy preservation principle. Avoidant healing can only occur within contexts that preserve and honor their fundamental need for autonomy and self-determination. This principle is crucial because avoidant attachment patterns often develop as protective responses to environments where personal autonomy was threatened or violated. Any healing approach that appears to compromise their autonomy will automatically trigger defensive responses that prevent growth and reinforce avoidant patterns. When you focus on your own development rather than trying to change them, you communicate profound respect for their autonomy and self-determination. This respect creates psychological safety that is essential for avoidant healing because it signals that your relationship does not pose threats to their independence or self-governance. This safety allows their natural growth impulses to emerge without triggering defensive protection systems. Autonomy preservation also means accepting their right to choose their own healing timeline and methods. Avoidant individuals often need extended periods of internal processing before they can risk the vulnerability required for emotional growth. Your acceptance of their process demonstrates that you understand and respect their unique healing needs rather than imposing external timelines or expectations. The preservation of autonomy extends to avoiding any attempts to manage, monitor, or evaluate their progress. When you truly focus on your own development, you naturally stop tracking their emotional state or measuring their growth against your expectations. This removal of external pressure creates space for them to explore their internal world without feeling observed or judged. Respecting their autonomy also means maintaining your own independent life and goals, regardless of their participation or approval. This independence demonstrates that your happiness and fulfillment do not depend on their emotional availability or growth, removing the pressure they might feel to change in order to maintain the relationship. This freedom from obligation paradoxically makes growth more appealing because it becomes a choice rather than a requirement. The emotional regulation modeling. Your own emotional regulation development provides powerful modeling that can influence avoidant partners through unconscious learning mechanisms. Avoidant individuals often struggle with emotional regulation because their defensive strategies involve suppression and numbing rather than healthy processing and integration. When you demonstrate effective emotional regulation in your daily life, you provide a template for healthier emotional functioning that they can unconsciously absorb. Emotional regulation modeling works through observation of how you handle stress, conflict, disappointment, and other challenging emotional states. As you develop greater capacity for experiencing and processing emotions without being overwhelmed or controlled by them, you demonstrate that emotional experience can be managed effectively without requiring avoidance or suppression. This demonstration challenges their fundamental assumptions about emotional safety and manageability. Your emotional regulation also creates a calmer, more stable emotional environment in the relationship that can help regulate their nervous system. Avoidant individuals often have hyperactive stress response systems that maintain chronic emotional tension. Your regulated emotional presence can provide co-regulation benefits that help calm their nervous system and create conditions more conducive to emotional exploration and growth. The modeling effect extends to demonstrating healthy boundary setting and emotional communication. As you develop skills in expressing your needs clearly, maintaining appropriate boundaries, and navigating emotional conversations effectively, you provide examples of emotional functioning that they may never have witnessed before. This modeling occurs through natural interaction rather than deliberate teaching, making it more likely to be absorbed without triggering resistance. Your emotional regulation development also demonstrates that emotional growth enhances rather than threatens personal power and autonomy. Many avoidant individuals avoid emotional development because they believe it will make them weak or vulnerable to manipulation. Your example of becoming stronger and more autonomous through emotional growth challenges these misconceptions and makes emotional development appear more appealing. The paradox of indirect influence. The most powerful influence you can have on an avoidant partner's healing journey operates through indirect mechanisms that respect their psychological defenses while creating optimal conditions for growth. This paradox of indirect influence suggests that the less directly you try to change them, the more likely change becomes. This occurs because indirect influence works with rather than against their natural psychological processes and defensive structures. Indirect influence operates through environmental modification rather than direct persuasion. When you focus on your own growth and development, you change the relational environment in ways that naturally encourage different responses and behaviors. These environmental changes work slowly and subtly, allowing adaptation to occur gradually without triggering defensive reactions. The paradox also involves creating attraction toward growth rather than pressure for change. As you become more fulfilled, confident, and emotionally mature, you naturally become more attractive as a partner and person. This attraction can motivate voluntary movement toward growth because they want to match your development level rather than feeling pressured to change to meet external demands. Indirect influence works through curiosity activation rather than defensive triggering. When you stop trying to change them and focus on your own interesting life and development, you may activate their natural curiosity about your process and progress. This curiosity can lead to voluntary questions and exploration that would never occur under direct pressure or therapeutic intervention. The paradox extends to creating security through independence rather than through emotional pursuit. As you develop your own life satisfaction and emotional security, independent of their availability or participation, you paradoxically create more security in the relationship. This security can provide the foundation they need for risking the vulnerability required for emotional growth and healing. The self-love foundation. Genuine self-love represents the cornerstone of any effective approach to potentially influencing avoidant healing because it addresses the codependent patterns that often maintain dysfunctional relationship dynamics. Self-love involves developing authentic appreciation for your own worth, maintaining healthy boundaries, and pursuing your own fulfillment, independent of your partner's emotional availability or growth. This foundation is essential because avoidant patterns often persist in relationships where their partner's self-worth depends on their approval or emotional participation. Self-love requires developing internal sources of validation and worth that do not depend on your partner's responsiveness or affection. Many partners of avoidant individuals gradually lose touch with their own value and worth as they focus increasingly on earning approval or emotional availability from someone who struggles to provide it. Rebuilding self-love means reconnecting with your intrinsic worth and developing the ability to appreciate yourself, regardless of their response to you. The development of self-love also involves pursuing your own interests, goals, and relationships with the same energy you may have previously directed toward managing or healing your partner. This redirection of energy not only improves your own life satisfaction, but also demonstrates to your partner that you have a rich, fulfilling life, independent of their participation. This independence can make you more attractive while reducing the pressure they may feel to be your primary source of happiness. Self-love includes developing emotional boundaries that protect your well-being from their avoidant behaviors. This means not taking their emotional distance personally, not organizing your mood around their availability, and maintaining your own emotional stability, regardless of their internal state. These boundaries protect you from the emotional roller coaster that often characterizes relationships with avoidant partners while modeling healthy emotional functioning. The practice of self-love extends to making decisions based on your own well-being, rather than on what might encourage their growth or healing. This means choosing activities, relationships, and life directions that serve your authentic development, rather than calculating what might inspire them to change. This authentic self-focus creates the genuine thriving that can serve as the most powerful catalyst for their own growth consideration. The detachment necessity, psychological detachment from the outcome of your partner's healing journey, represents an essential component of creating conditions where healing becomes possible. This detachment does not mean emotional disconnection or lack of caring, but rather freedom from being invested in whether they choose to grow or remain in their avoidant patterns. This detachment is necessary because attachment to their healing outcome creates subtle pressures and expectations that can interfere with their autonomous growth process. Detachment involves accepting that they may never choose to heal or grow beyond their current avoidant patterns. This acceptance removes the underlying agenda that can contaminate your interactions and makes your self-focus authentic rather than manipulative. When you genuinely accept that they may remain avoidant indefinitely, you free yourself to make decisions based on your own well-being rather than on hopes for their transformation. The practice of detachment also involves releasing expectations about timelines for growth or specific changes you hope to see. Avoidant healing often occurs slowly and unpredictably, with periods of apparent progress, followed by regression or stagnation. Your detachment from these fluctuations allows you to maintain your own stability and development regardless of their current state or trajectory. Detachment extends to not monitoring or measuring their progress toward emotional availability or intimacy. This monitoring creates subtle pressure and expectations that can interfere with their natural process while keeping you focused on their development rather than your own. True detachment means losing interest in tracking their emotional state or relationship behaviors as measures of your success or failure. The necessity of detachment also involves developing genuine contentment with the relationship as it currently exists while maintaining clarity about your own needs and boundaries. This contentment removes the underlying dissatisfaction that can create pressure for change while still honoring your own requirements for fulfillment and growth. The attraction of authenticity, authentic self-expression, and genuine personal development create natural attraction that can draw avoidant partners toward growth without triggering their defensive systems. This attraction operates through psychological principles that make genuine authenticity inherently appealing while respecting the autonomy and independence that avoidant individuals value. When you become more authentically yourself through your own healing and development, you create magnetic qualities that can inspire voluntary movement toward growth. Authenticity creates attraction because it demonstrates the emotional freedom and self-expression that avoidant individuals unconsciously crave but fear accessing. Your authentic expression shows them possibilities for emotional liberation that do not require sacrificing autonomy or independence. This demonstration can activate their own desires for authentic self-expression that may have been suppressed through their avoidant strategies. The attraction of authenticity also operates through contrast with the emotional suppression and numbness that characterizes avoidant functioning. As you become more emotionally alive and expressive through your own development, you provide a vivid contrast to their emotional flatness that can highlight what they may be missing through their defensive strategies. This contrast can create motivation for change that emerges from internal desire rather than external pressure. Authentic living also demonstrates integration between emotional expression and personal power that challenges avoidant assumptions about emotional vulnerability. Many avoidant individuals avoid emotional expression because they believe it will make them weak or manipulable. Your example of becoming stronger and more powerful through authentic emotional expression challenges these beliefs and makes emotional development appear more appealing. The attraction extends to the confidence and self-assurance that develop through authentic self-expression and personal growth. As you become more comfortable with yourself and more confident in your own worth, you naturally become more attractive as a partner. This attraction can motivate voluntary efforts toward growth because they want to match your development level rather than feeling inadequate in comparison. The reflection catalyst. When you genuinely thrive and flourish in your own development, you create conditions that naturally catalyze self-reflection in avoidant partners through comparison and contrast mechanisms. This reflection occurs automatically as they observe the differences between your growing vitality and their own emotional patterns, leading to internal questioning that cannot be generated through direct confrontation or therapeutic persuasion. The reflection catalyst operates through cognitive dissonance between their avoidance strategies and the evidence of your successful emotional development. As they witness your increased happiness, confidence, and life satisfaction resulting from emotional authenticity and healthy relationships, it challenges their unconscious beliefs about the costs and benefits of emotional openness. This cognitive dissonance creates internal pressure for resolution that can lead to questioning their own approaches. Your thriving also creates temporal contrast that highlights changes over time. As they observe your progression from whatever state you were in when you began focusing on yourself to your current level of development, they cannot dismiss your growth as temporary or superficial. This temporal evidence of sustainable positive change can be particularly powerful in encouraging their own self-reflection about possibilities for their own development. The reflection process is enhanced by the fact that your growth occurs within their direct observation, making it impossible to dismiss or rationalize away. Unlike theoretical discussions about the benefits of emotional growth or healing, your lived experience provides undeniable evidence that challenges their assumptions about emotional risks and relationship costs. The catalyst effect also works through identification and connection. Because they care about you and have emotional investment in your well-being, your happiness and success matter to them in ways that abstract therapeutic concepts do not. Your thriving activates their capacity for vicarious satisfaction while simultaneously highlighting areas where their own life might be lacking fulfillment or vitality. The boundary strength demonstration. Your development of strong, healthy boundaries through your self-focused journey demonstrates relationship skills that can inspire avoidant partners while respecting their need for autonomy and space. Healthy boundaries show that emotional connection does not require enmeshment or loss of individual identity, addressing one of the core fears that maintains avoidant attachment patterns. Boundary strength demonstrates that you can maintain your own emotional stability and well-being, regardless of their level of emotional availability or participation. This demonstration removes the pressure they may feel to manage your emotional state or provide emotional support beyond their current capacity. This removal of pressure can paradoxically make them more willing to offer emotional connection because it becomes a choice rather than an obligation. Your healthy boundaries also model the possibility of intimate relationships that preserve individual autonomy and independence. Many avoidant individuals avoid emotional intimacy because they fear losing themselves in relationships or being controlled by their partner's emotional needs. Your example of maintaining strong identity and independence within an intimate relationship challenges these fears and makes emotional connection appear safer. The demonstration of boundary strength extends to showing how emotional limits can be communicated clearly and kindly without creating conflict or relationship damage. As you develop skills in expressing your needs and limits effectively, you provide a template for healthy emotional communication that they can observe and potentially adopt for their own use. Boundary strength also demonstrates self-respect and self-advocacy that can inspire similar development in avoidant partners. Your willingness to prioritize your own well being and maintain your standards shows that self care and emotional authenticity are compatible with loving relationships, challenging beliefs that emotional needs must be sacrificed for relationship harmony. The organic growth environment. Creating an environment where organic growth becomes possible requires removing all external pressure for change while maintaining your own development and vitality. This organic environment respects the natural timing and process of avoidant healing while providing optimal conditions for growth to emerge if and when they choose to pursue it. The organic growth environment is characterized by acceptance of their current state combined with clear demonstration of alternative possibilities through your own life. This combination removes pressure while providing inspiration, creating conditions where curiosity about growth can emerge naturally without triggering defensive responses. Patience becomes a crucial component of creating organic growth conditions. Avoidant healing often requires extended periods of internal processing and gradual movement toward vulnerability. Your willingness to maintain your own development journey without rushing their process demonstrates respect for their natural timing while modeling the sustained commitment that healing requires. The environment also requires maintaining emotional safety through consistent, predictable responses that do not punish their avoidant behaviors or reward them for emotional availability. This consistency creates the psychological safety necessary for them to explore vulnerability without fear of manipulation or rejection based on their level of emotional participation. Creating organic growth conditions also means celebrating small movements toward emotional availability without making them feel pressured to continue or expand their efforts. This celebration acknowledges their courage in risking vulnerability while maintaining their freedom to retreat if needed, supporting their natural growth process rather than trying to accelerate or direct it. The organic approach ultimately recognizes that genuine healing cannot be forced, manipulated, or earned through external efforts. It can only emerge from internal readiness, combined with supportive environmental conditions that respect autonomy while demonstrating possibilities. Your role is to create these conditions through your own authentic development, while releasing all attachment to whether they choose to utilize the opportunities for growth that your thriving creates.